first step in this PLC right now is very simple, I think, Craig. I think we just need to identify an area of instructional focus, right? An instructional area of focus. How are we going to help our kids improve in critical thinking skills, if you will, as far as an instructional strategy, something that we're going to try that's maybe a little bit different. So what do anything come to mind, like as far as that?
I know you brought a grade book.
Yeah,
so did I.
And we were looking at it, right? Before.
So I'm wondering, are there any sort of things that came up in the first couple weeks? Like I noticed my students were having problems with problem solving, questions that are a little more complex.
Yeah, that's, you know what? And
engagement's always an issue, but just, the small, easy step ones they get, but as soon as I try to, apply these skills to a different question, but same skills,
yeah, it's
big trouble.
I'm noticing the same thing. Procedurally, my kids are really good. They can repeat a drill or a procedure that I've taught them, but all of a sudden I dress the question up a little bit, put it in a different type of a packaging, and they're having trouble unwrapping that, right? So it's those higher, like, cognitive demand type questions they're having problems with. So I think that's going to be consistent with any real course within the math department, as far as I'm concerned. I think our kids are obviously going to be struggling with those level 3 type problems, right?
So I know there's some of the sort of questions we're kind of supposed to look at, like, what are the areas of assessment that our students are struggling with? So we've kind of identified, both of us, doesn't matter if it's 10, and obviously if I'm not doing things in 10, they're not translating into 12, right? So you're saying the same things are being addressed at.
Right.
So let's talk about causes for a minute. What do we really think the issue is?
So why? Like, why are they struggling?
Like, why, or what can we do different so that, because obviously whatever we're doing, my plan's just not working.
Well, see, here's the thing. What we have, as well as I do, we have an awesome math department head. Right? The first thing I feel like doing right now is the printer. Geez, slap. The first thing I feel like doing right now is sitting down with him. Mr. McClellan, he's awesome. He's taught all these courses, and I think he really has a handle on what teaching students through problem solving, or what teaching critical thinking skills might look like in different classes. So maybe...
Right, because he's an IB teacher, so I know they've had some additional training in, how that sort of looks as well.
So why don't we do this? Well, I'll talk to him for sure, and I'm going to pull as much resources from him as possible. Maybe I'll get him to come meet with us when he has some opportunity to kind of support us too. In the meantime, why don't we go our separate ways here? I know right away I'm kind of inspired about this. I'm going to go home. I'm going to get online and say, hey, what does teaching critical thinking skills look like in a math classroom? There's got to be stuff online. There's got to be some professional literature, some online resources that we can access. And why don't we both do that? We'll bring it all next week. We meet again, right? Same time? Is the same time or different?
And let's bring our CSI plan next week, because I think there's a couple specific strategies in there that might be addressing that as well.
Okay, so we'll bring that. We'll bring everything we find as far as strategies that might prove useful or beneficial to students in terms of critical thinking in the math classroom, and we'll go from there. And maybe we focus on 1 or 2 of those, and we get our heads around that, and then we start maybe planning an implementation plan for that, or something like that.
I like that. So meet same time again next week.
Yeah, great.
All right.
Awesome. All right. Okay. So I spoke to McClellan about, I said, hey Mike, we're in a PLC here, Greg and I, and one of the things that we really want to focus on is helping, obviously our school goal, helping our kids improve in critical thinking. What are some strategies?
Was he excited when you said relate to the school goal?
Well, he did.
All right.
Because he's doing a lot of hard work on that. So, but the first thing he did was he kind of laughed. He goes, "Don't you remember the PD they went to?" And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean?" We both went to this teaching through problems, so it's breakthrough mathematics PD, and the whole focus is on helping kids become better problem solvers, helping kids develop critical thinking skills. And one of the strategies he talked to us about was teaching through problem solving, really helping the kids work their way through problems, develop those critical thinking skills, and then, believe it or not, he said, giving descriptive feedback along the way to those kids. So I thought that was really interesting.
Kind of linked together.
Yeah, it was totally awesome. The other thing that I kind of looked at online about was, anytime I looked at supporting students in mathematics, improving achievement in mathematics, one of the biggest things was differentiated assessment and instruction, right? So knowing that not all our kids are going to be struggling with the same content, with the same type of questions and so on and so forth. So kind of using assessment and instruction to meet kids where they are, their own ability levels.
Because we know, how many times does we keep hearing if we just do things the same, the results going to be the same.
And so, doing the same thing for all our kids. So one of the other things I found online there was just some information about implementing effective questioning. So often, and this is totally speaking to my practice, it was so funny because how many times when you're working and a kid put out their hand and says, can you help me with number 4? We go over and we walk them through it, right? Like I do that all the time. I just walk them through. Yeah, we got to do this. And you
or say it louder.
But how many times do you take your pencil out of their hands? I do it all the time. I just grab their pencil and I start working, right? So this was speaking to a strategy where completely hands off, and in order to help them when they have that question, to provide them with a question. So whether the question is re-engaging them into the problem, redirecting them because they're way off base, or clarifying a question that asking them to clarify what it is that they really need help with.
So if I just help them and do the question for them, that's not helping them at all.
It says,
I'm helping them, but I'm really not.
Yeah, you're helping them maybe accomplish a question, but have we helped them develop the goal being become better problem solvers and critical thinkers.
So when they get to the next problem they have to apply those skills, they're right back where they were.
They're right back, and the hand goes up again,
Mr.
right?
McKinnon, come help me.
I see that all the time. I'm sure you do in grade 10 too, right?
You're right.
So I thought that was really awesome. If we're going to do something, I'd rather do one thing right now really well. Let's invest ourselves in one strategy. Like we're talking about 3 or 4 here right now, instructional strategies.
Pick one. And
let's identify one instructional area of focus here that we're going to change our practice with a little bit.
And then we would just try that out for like next week, or?
Well, you know what? I'm looking at some of my notes here and it says, okay, plan the implementation of what we're going to do. This is a stretch for us. Like if we're going to do teaching through problem solving, for example, what that looks like is actually, when we're up front and we're introducing a new concept, well, teaching through problem solving, from what I read, I went back to my breakthrough binders, it's actually introducing a concept through a problem, through a higher level type problem, that we just place them in flexible groups and let them go, and let them attempt it. So,
right, because I remember one of those strategies in the plan was if we let them work cooperatively together, that encourages the critical thinking.
And
so that's one of the things we're doing right there.
Absolutely.
But that's going to be hard for me because I'm used to doing the 20 minutes up front, where it's me.
It's a stretch.
And then I give them that.
That's right. And then we work on problems, right? We introduce the concept, teach them how to do it, and we just... Do me a favor, can we write a few things down on the board just to kind of keep us focused in this meeting? Like, I just want our steps so that we can make the most out of our time here today together. So the first thing we're going to do, let's talk about how the implementation went. I'd love also to know, because I know this is like, I've kind of had a little bit of experience in this. I'd love to know how you felt that change on your practice went. Like, I'm dying to know if this is something that you feel that you could, do in the long run. Like you see yourself doing this on an ongoing basis, right?
So we're looking at 2 different things. We're looking at how to go, what impacts have it on the students, but maybe how to go for us too.
Absolutely, for your professional practice.
We can carry on.
Absolutely. If you feel, do you need more learning in that area? Like, do we need to pick up some more tips, some more strategies on how to implement that effectively?
And now are we going to decide, like, how are we going to start measuring?
That's right.
If it's worth continuing on with? Like, are we going to start talking about some assessing of that, or are we just going to go anecdotal?
Well, there's some anecdotal notes.
Or what data we're going to collect, maybe?
Yeah, that's what we need to go. Like, first of all, if we feel like we're good enough and we're confident in the strategy and implementing it, now let's sit down and talk about how are we going to evaluate whether or not it's having an impact on the kids. Because if we implement a strategy like this teaching through problem solving, but the kids aren't getting better at their critical thinking skills, what's the point? We got to change things up. So maybe we need to sit down today and talk about how we're going to assess whether or not it's having an impact on student learning.
So this is a lot to do for today, so maybe let's get at it.
Let's get at it. So I kind of had a few key questions in my head, like just so I could rhyme them off, or I could like re-engage them in the problem, redirect them because I think they're off, like going the wrong direction, and even kind of like asking them to clarify what they're asking to me. So I had those on hand. I roamed the whole class, like
just roam.
I roamed from group to group and listened, and then I used redirection just to keep them on task.
Here's the, like I know one of the things we said we talked about was what was the impact on the student learning.
Right.
So here's what I saw. They were more willing to take risks to do things because later that week, when I sort of threw something up on the board, I was just about to launch into it, and a couple of them said, "Hey, can we just like work on it for a couple minutes ourselves?" Like awesome. I was like, "Sure." Right. So even they knew like it wasn't judgmental, and that just sort of unfolded, and then I had a couple people go up, try out solutions. then it was really, like it was a flipped classroom almost. Like they did everything and
they came up with solution strategies, and that's what happened. At the end of the class, I brought each, kind of representatives from each group. They came up to the front and just kind of explained how they went about their strategies and how they solved it. Now, all I did was validate those strategies, and if they were way off, there was one group that was way off, I kind of validated their work, and we kind of redirected them in a way. But right now I haven't even gone into quadratics. Well, here's the thing. Our curriculums differ, for sure. So I'm going to find it hard for us to give the same question, especially considering the content that you're doing, the content I'm doing.
Yeah, that's how you're doing something totally different.
Yeah, but so let's make it, like I understand what you're saying, like we've implemented a strategy here, and we just started, but how do we know it's having an impact on student learning? Like how do we know they're getting better at critical thinking and solving problems and this and that? So we need to find out a way that whether or not this instruction strategy is even working, right? Because if it's not, I gotta be honest with you, Greg, I'm not doing teaching through problem solving if it's not helping the kids. I'm gonna stop.
Right.
Right?
If we're not, thinking about is it successful or should we replicate it, or maybe we want to share it with other people. Right. But if we're like, no, that's a waste of time.
Because it's not working, right?
Stop it. Like, how many times have we done the same thing for 5 years and it was a bad plan? Like, I'm done with that.
Okay, so my thought is this. If we're going to sit here today and kind of determine maybe some types of small, like formative type assessments that we could use to kind of assess whether or not this is having an impact on them, they have to be related to what we're doing in the class. They obviously have to be like of a higher order type, a problem type, a rich problem of such, related to our curriculum. So,
and does that have to be something that we give some feedback on too?
And we have to be able to kind of either take it in or maybe we don't take it in, maybe we just kind of, maybe we go around to their desks and kind of evaluate them as they go. And maybe evaluate their approach. And then again, we have to sit down and decide what are we going to be looking for that defines improvement in critical thinking.
Right, so
what are some criteria?
Right, so both of us together, I guess, whether we do that right now or whether we meet later in the week before we sort of collect some stuff and see how it's going.
Right.
We really need to decide on what our criteria are.
What's the criteria for critical thinking?
Critical thinking,
what does good critical thinking skills look like?
How we're going to have sort of a common marking scheme or rubric, whatever you want to call it, so you and I are on the same page about
how we're assessing it.
If I look at a sample from you, you look at a sample from me, we sort of mark those together so we know we're on the same page.
Okay.
About that. So, and then we'll start. So yeah, all right.
Great. Listen, I'm real tired today. I mean, this is end of the day, but I I know it's important that we meet, and this is it. We've been doing this now, like I've implemented, I know it's last 4 weeks or so, right?
For the common assessments.
Yeah, and I've implemented 3 to this point, and I have my 4th one now. And I know we talked about bringing the results here, just having like our classroom data, like
got mine here.
You got yours there, just to kind of talk it over and see how our kids are doing. So we've implemented these kind of open-ended, higher-level problems in the curriculum. We've done it. We really got to get down now to looking at this data because now let's talk about our kids. Because I know, Greg, in my class right now, I have a whole lot of kids that are responding extremely well to this, and it's very obvious that they now are building, number one, the confidence to take risks. They're also feeling that they have different strategies to use when I'm giving them a problem that they really need to dive into and think critically about. But I also have a handful of kids still that haven't really responded yet or still struggling.
All right, I'm kind of the same. Remember we talked about that first week we had some anecdotal data, just how is it going? We felt good about it. We felt the kids were good about it. But now, after doing it for a couple weeks like you were saying, I'm seeing that, okay, we got a group of kids that are doing better.
Okay.
Have the assessment, give them some feedback, a little bit of guidance, a little bit better. But those kids who weren't doing well still aren't doing well.
Still aren't doing well? Right. From the get-go?
From the get-go. So I got a group that better. I think that whatever we're doing differently for them around the problem solving, the changes I felt I made in my class are making a difference. But I still have that group of kids that I don't think it's making a difference for.
Okay. So the idea here is like, how are you responding? Okay, because here's the thing. Bottom line is this. It's working, and yet it's not working for some, so what are we going to do about it?
So what changes do we make in our instructional practice as a result of this?
Okay.
Like, I know we've been tweaking a little bit, or I've been tweaking a little bit, I know you have too.
I
So
gotta
did you do
tell
anything differently with groups?
This is the thing, okay? So when I first started out doing this teaching through problem solving, putting the problem, I was completely hands off, okay? So everyone was attacking the problem in groups.
Just like go to.
It was just go to it. I was being very,
Right.
I like to think I was being effective with my effective questioning to kind of support them through, okay? The more and more I've done this, like the last 4 weeks, I've recognized that there's a specific pocket of kids that are still struggling with that, okay? So what I've done, like in terms of how I've changed my practice, I've set the culture already for them to work in groups by doing this.
And that's one of the working collaborative is one of the strategies.
Yeah, so it was
that's a change for me.
Right. So what I've done was now I'm strategically selecting my groups so that I've grouped the kids that are struggling together. And let me tell you why. And this is how, like, why I think the kids are going to react really well when I keep doing this, is that those kids that I know that are being successful with this type of learning, this constructivist approach to learning, they're good. They're taking risks on their own, and I can check in throughout. Now I have the kids all together that really need me, like really need me in a more in-depth way. So they're, not only are they sitting together, they're struggling with the same type of thing. So now I've kind of adapted my practice in a way where I'm giving them a little bit more of a differentiated kind of look of instruction. I'm with them a little bit more.
Okay, what are we doing to help?
I think, as far as I'm going to go, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing right now.
Right.
But with those kids that are really struggling, like I highly recommend that you try that grouping piece.
Right.
And put those kids now, go homogeneous groupings and see if you can support them in that way. It's cutting you from running around a little bit more, it's more focused support.
Right.
So differentiate your instruction in that way using those flexible groups. But what about bringing these kids up to a support team in the school?
Right.
Like, why don't we get all the individuals involved in supporting these kids together?
Because there's things that the school planning team or intervention team could help us with and say, we know this kid, this has worked really well in another class. Have you tried this? Have you tried this?
Right.
Or maybe it's a literacy issue. Like maybe we don't know. Maybe that kid's really struggling to read, and we're trying to teach them complex problem strategies, but they're really struggling to read the question.
Right.
Not with the.
So it's the comprehension of
Yeah.
and so on and so.
Something
Great.
like that.
So what do we do? You want to bring them to like school planning team?
Right, so let's do that. We'll take those kids who are really struggling, try to get some support for them, and we'll continue on with the common assessments, because it's worth continuing on with.
Right.
Like we're seeing some gains.
So let's
And
keep
we'll keep
the
sort of
practice.
reevaluating.
Let's keep the change. Let's keep that instructional strategy in place.
Right.
Do we want to add anything at this point, or are we let's just let it roll?
I think we're good. Like let's want to collect a few more weeks of data and see how it goes.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right. So our action plan, sort of leaving, is just
Let's pick our our highest kind of red zone kids
Right.
in our class that might still not be responding well to things that we're doing differently. Bring them to SPT. Let's have a conversation with what the best strategy. Maybe there's things out there that we don't know about these kids.
like maybe the assessment format we're using doesn't work for them.
Right.
Maybe they need a different kind of assessment.
Okay.
I haven't even thought about doing that yet. Like we've been talking about
Yeah.
instructional practice.
Yeah, we haven't even changed
but
up how we're
we haven't
assessing
changed
it.
it how we're assessing, so that might be it as well.
Okay.
You want the board to come back to the next